OK。
好啦，差唔多啦。
I think it is almost time. First of all, I would like to invite Mr. Chen Kin-po, the chair of the Finance Committee, to make a start. All right, let me say something first. I will speak in Cantonese to be followed by English, and then at that moment, the Secretariat will hand out a copy of my speech, so you don't need to take down the notes in a detailed way. First of all, thank you for coming to today's press briefing so that we can take a look of the work of the Finance Committee during the current legislative session. Within the current legislative session, we held 75 meetings. Last time there were 100 meetings. This time 161 hours. Last time 214 hours. We have clocked fewer hours because we have a new term of the Finance Committee. We have to wait for the Public Works Subcommittee and the Establishment Subcommittee to finish their first round of scrutiny before the papers will come to the Finance Committee. And therefore, we only had our first meeting in middle of December. There were 64 sessions to scrutinize financial proposals from the administration using 123 hours. We completed the scrutiny of 29 items of financial proposals. All of them were approved, amounting to last year there were 88 items. We can see that currently we spent 4.2 hours on average in dealing with one item. During the last term, on average, it was much shorter. And so you can see that we spent double the time, and the progress was slow, and it has worsened the backlog of our outstanding items. There's one note that I want to share with you, that is that there is a growing number of items that the Finance Committee has to go through despite having been approved by the subcommittees. If you look at paragraph 3 of the Finance Committee procedures, in fact, there's no need to go through them again. But then the reality is that a lot of such items have been taken out from the en bloc recommendations and they have to be voted on separately. Say, for example, the PWSC scrutinized 18 items. 90% of them, there are 16 out of the 18, were taken out for fresh discussion again at the FC. For the ESC, 11 out of 14 items have been taken out. In other words, 80% of them. When compared with the year 2012-2013, it was about 20%. Currently, it is 80%. So the ratio has gone up drastically. As to the questions asked by members, in fact, they are often a repetition of those asked by subcommittee members. So the public may wonder why we need to have the subcommittees and the Finance Committee. It seems that it's a waste of time. In fact, we spent a lot of time on dealing with adjournment motions. We have had 64 meetings. Altogether, 16 motions have been moved by members to adjourn the meeting or to adjourn the item being discussed, spending 16 hours on them, accounting for 13% of the meeting time. And for the current year, as you know, that under paragraph 37A of the Finance Committee procedures, members may move motions without notice. I have agreed to have 158 of them to be dealt with. Last year, 223 such motions. They were called motions without notice, and they used up 12 hours of our time. This year, I have approved fewer such motions, but then 60% of our items have had to be affected by 37A motions. In other words, it has become another tool to be used by members. Usually they take this opportunity to express their opinions, and to a certain extent the progress of our work of scrutinizing the funding proposals has been affected. Another point that we want to talk about is the shortening the duration of the ringing of the division bell. We spent 5.5 hours, accounting for 4.5% of our meeting time. Last year it was 3.5 hours. In other words, from the statistics, you can see that there is a lot of room to filibuster, and we spent a lot of time dealing with such moves. I have noted that many members frequently raised points of order, but in fact they were taking the opportunity to express their views or dissatisfaction. I had to handle such matters, and in fact it used up a lot of our precious time. In addition, in the middle of July, 4 members were disqualified according to a court ruling. A number of members would like to express their dissatisfaction and to make a political stance, and they have been blocking the FC meetings, so that a number of meetings before the LegCo went into recess were interrupted or cancelled. At that time, there was still a large number of outstanding items. As the chair of the FC, I was gravely anxious. At the end of the day, quite a number of livelihood and infrastructure-related items were not approved. It is a pity, and I find it helpless. I have the duty to lead the FC to discharge our duties properly, and our function is to scrutinize the funding proposals from the administration. It isn't the forum for general policy discussion or venting out our emotions. I hope members won't forget the basics. We need to scrutinize the proposals in a rational manner. We should focus on the livelihood and well-being of the people. We should discharge our duties properly. Lastly, I want to thank Mr. Michael Tian, the Deputy Chair, as well as the hard work of the Secretariat. As a result of the contribution, we are able to carry out our work. They have been working hard, and their support has been professional. Thank you.
Now I would now highlight my key messages in English.
I will now 或者請派一派嗰啲文件俾各。
Please distribute the papers.
Key messages in English. During the 2017-2018 legislative session, the Financial Committee has held 75 meetings, spending about 161 hours. Of these 64 meetings were spent on deliberating financial proposals put forward by the administration. The committee has deliberated and approved 29 financial proposals involving 73 billion. There were heated debates on controversial proposals. Regarding the committee's deliberation, I noticed several phenomena this year. On average, the committee spent a much longer time on items this year, which was 4.2 hours per item versus 2 hours last year. Individual proposals were more frequently taken out from the subcommittee en bloc recommendation for separate discussion in the Finance Committee. So that is now 79% and 89% of the number of items endorsed respectively by the Establishment Subcommittee and the Public Works Subcommittee. In comparison, the figures was only 20% last year. There was also a higher proportion of meeting time spent on dealing with we call the 37A. 10% of this time, 10% of time this year versus 7.3 last year. Members also frequently moved and spoke lengthily on procedure motions such as adjournment motions or those for shortening the duration of ringing the division bell. All these contribute to the committee's slow progress in dealing with the funding proposals on the agenda. On some occasions, the committee procedures were obstructed by individual members' disorderly behavior. In face of this challenge, I have tried my best to ensure smooth and orderly deliberation at the committee's meeting. I hope members in future can really focus their discussion on the funding proposals. Lastly, I'm most grateful to the Deputy Chairman and his secretarial staff for their support over the past section.
Now we will now take questions. Joyce, please. TVB Joyce. Mr. Chen, you have proposed the change changing the rules of procedures and the FC procedures, including the fact that a member who has been evicted cannot return to the chamber or the meeting room on the same day. And also there will be a limit on the number of motions moved. So people are very, very worried. Ip Kwok Kim did that way back, and he was putting a limit. So as a result, 190 motions were moved by members as a way to oppose your proposal. So would you be worried that the same will happen? How confident are you in getting your proposals passed? I think the pandemic's response is quite expected. You will not expect them to say that they will support your proposal so that the meetings can be conducted more smoothly. So they will definitely not say that. But please try to understand the spirit behind my proposals. I've got 4 proposals now instead of 2. And after the proposals are accepted, I believe that we will save up 30% of our meeting time. And I would like to use that 30% for members to focus their discussions on the funding proposals. For example, we are now using this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 minute rule. Now, when the member gets to the 5th round, 1 minute is quite meaningless. You can't say much. After you have spoken, the administration will not be given the time to respond. And I am now proposing it to 5, 5, 4, 4, 3, or even 2 in the future. So I believe that we can make the better use of our time, and members can be more focused in their questions. Actually, 30 to 40% of our time is wasted now. Some people in the past have used tactics so that we could not handle it. Well, in relation to the 1.9 million motions, they're trying to store the matter. I have my own way of dealing with that, but I will not disclose that now. Members may notice that in the past, well, there has been a clear provision of the FC chairman's power, but after there is this court ruling, we have got more clear about the powers of the FC chairman and the president council, because the rules and procedures were stipulated or drawn up some 20 years ago, and back then people would not be aware that people can maneuver around the rules so that they can filibuster. Now we are seeing that the FC is not discharging its duties properly, so that's why I think my proposals for changes are reasonable and rational. And as a politician, we must do things, work on things which should be done and which are important. So no matter how difficult the task is, I'm going to do it. I think my proposals, the 4 proposals, have good grounds and justifications. I've been I will be removing hurdles, but at the same time I'll be adding the meeting time, the speaking time for members. I hope that the members can support my proposals. That's how I'm going to do it. Now I'm preparing the relevant papers and documents. That means I have to get all the data and statistics, and I have to set out my reasons for the proposed changes. Then I will prepare a paper, and then the pro-establishment camp will discuss that. And after that, the document will be handed over to the non-establishment camp members so that they can discuss it and deliberate on it. And then we can sit together and discuss it. And then even the non-establishment camp members can also propose changes themselves. So that takes time. And I hope that in October, when there is a resumption of the electoral, we can start discussing that. Well, on this respect, I have something to say. The chairman has shared some data, and the data speak for themselves. That a message is very clear from these data. And the FC's objective is to scrutinize funding proposals. We are not there to procrastinate on scrutinizing the proposals. So if that is the case, should we be given more time to ask quality questions? You can't ask quality questions in 1 minute. You have to do it in 2 to 3 minutes. And the government officers can also make use of the 1 minute rule to try not to respond. But if members are given 2 to 3 minutes, the administration is duty-bound to respond. Now, we can't do it now because there have been a lot of adjournment motions raised and so on. So I think we have to look at the whole picture again. Now, if anyone has a question on a funding proposal, now he can vote against it at the end of the day. If he thinks that the information is insufficient, and he can ask for an adjournment of the discussion of the item. But then they are still raising a motion to adjourn the meetings. So if they move a motion to adjourn the meeting altogether, that means other items will not be discussed. So are these two types of motions duplicating with each other? Does it mean that we should come up with a newer way of dealing with such situations? So what the chairman is raising is that we should sit down and discuss all these. Now, over the years, while the different chairmen came with their own style of dealing with matters, is this something good for Hong Kong in the long term? If we can have a proposal for the long term which is supported by all, then it's easier, because the way the meeting will be conducted will not depend on the personal style of the chairman. So in the long term, we should come up with proposals which are supported by all.
You mentioned that you initially had 2 proposals to amend the rules. You now have 4. Can you talk a bit about the other 2 that you have? And secondly, you mentioned that the court give you, the chairman, a lot of powers. You also cited in last year the amendment motions, the 37As. The ones that you approved are much less last year compared to the year before. So you already have a lot of powers. So why do you want to limit lawmakers from making just one amendment motion on each item? The first 2 questions first. Thank you.
Maybe I should recap all the 4 motions. The first one is that once a member is asked by the chairman to leave the meeting venue, then that member should not come back for the whole day. That's my proposal. The second one is about the 37A. Whether we should be changing it to the original intention of 1, because in the English wording it is a motion, but I guess for the Chinese it's very clear. In the Chinese version it is 一行. 一行 is 一行. And then the third one I'm proposing is when we say we are going to, there's now a choice of adjourning item and adjourn the meeting. So you can only raise one for the adjourning the item, but you can adjourn the meeting every day, which is, I think is totally crazy. And then the third one is about the ringing bell, that when you ask for division, it can change from 5 minutes to 1 minute. So they are basically the 5 proposal. Maybe I would take some time later. I would explain to the media about the details later in the later times. But anyway, the second question you're asking, that now that the chairman is able to control the number of 37 days, so why would I propose this? Because I first of all, I think that the original intention is only 1, but now we've been using it for so long that it's now more than 1. This is not satisfactory. But there are also even more voices saying that whether the 37A is necessary at all, because the 37A is actually expression of comments by the members. But usually when you really go into that items, I think we are very lucky. In the past, very few items were decided by the meeting that it should be a sort of handles. Because once it's approved to go ahead, then you have, everyone will be given 3 minutes to discuss. That could easily drag on more than 1 hour. That's only for 1 item. Imagine you have 20 items and everyone is asked to discuss, then I would take many hours. So that is a very effective filibustering tool to me. So there are actually more. In the past, I only mentioned, and anyway, maybe I have answered a question. I want to now more easily say in Chinese so that people understand what I'm saying now. 嗱，我認為嗰30
To me, for 37A motions, well, other than the point about A motion, well, in fact, we've looked at all the figures. Well, I think another consideration is to dispense with 37A altogether. You may be surprised, you will say that it's outrageous, but then if you listen to me, then you will find that it is fully justifiable, because for 37A motions, it is a way for members to express their views. Let me talk about the history. Why did we get 37A? Well, I think at a particular meeting, a member would like to express opinions, and everybody said that perhaps just one or two members would like to do so, and it was welcome. Now, let's take a look of the 37A motions we have got. Most of the 37A motions did not get passed, except on the occasion that when we scrutinized the education expenditure item, someone tried to drag, and so it was passed. So most of them did not get ahead, and we did not have discussion. But then you can imagine what would happen if there was a discussion, and then it is not legally binding. In fact, the government can do nothing about it. The government doesn't have to do anything in response. Now, we have been spending a lot of time on such 37A motions, up to 10% of our meeting time. We need to be careful. Now, you would say that there will be lots of huge political repercussions if we start to dispense with 37A. Now, as the chair, my duty is as follows. Well, I'll try to identify all the possible tools for filibuster, and I have to anticipate what tools will be revived when there is a political confrontation. As a responsible chair, I have to identify all the issues. As the chair, I have to collect the information. Ultimately, it will be up to both the establishment camp and the non-establishment camp to have a discussion. So it's a duty on everybody to have a discussion. Don't jump up when you hear about my proposals, and you don't need to become too agitated. I think after all, it's a matter of whether it is necessary to have it. And then for the division bell, it should be shortened from 5 minutes to 1 minute. What does that mean? It means that we can move more quickly. We may have a dozen or 37A motions. Instead of spending 20 minutes on 4 of them, we can have 1 minute each. Of course, currently you can have a discussion whether the bell should be shortened. And when you start to have a debate on shortening the bell, then it goes against the original intention. It's counterproductive. And then we have the same arguments. Somebody needs to spend more time going to the toilet, etc., etc. Now, in overseas parliaments, what they do is that they have a different arrangement. That is, for procedural motions, there is no room for debate, and they will be put to the vote immediately. This is separately dealt with from general motions. Now, at the PRC meetings, despite items have been approved by them, 90% of them got discussed again at the FC meetings. So we need to look at the relationship between the FC and its 2 subcommittees. If 90% of them were scrutinized or deliberated once again, what is the point? So we need to look into the proposals in details. Don't respond to sort of emotionally if you when you hear about the proposals. Now, if eventually the idea is not picked up, that's it. But I don't think it is right for me not to alert you to the issue and have a discussion.
And the 4 pro-democracy lawmakers were disqualified. There were some pro-government colleagues who said, okay, maybe it's not yet time. We're not in a rush to amend the rules of procedure. Maybe the person was referring to, I think it was Wong Kwok Kin. Maybe he was referring to the whole LegCo's rules of procedure, but not quite the FC. But do you think, at this stage, with fewer pro-democracy lawmakers in the council, is there a rush, is there an urgent need, really, to change the Finance Committee's rules? Would it be better if you wait until after the by-election just so that they have more of a chance to express their views? Thank you.
First of all, I must let you know that we have been discussing this kind of changes for quite a while. So this is not something that is discussed after the DQ incident. It's simply something that ongoing discussion on this. Everything is, is in our mind. And especially for FC, Finance Committee, this is not an issue whether these people are DQ or not, because we simply only need a majority. And we already have a majority in the Finance Committee. So this is not something that I would consider. 其他有冇咩問題？係，請講。係，好多人舉手㗎嘛。
A lot of you have raised your hands, so would like to ask questions? Please give the microphone to the reporter. I'm Stephen. Mr. Chen. A lot of your proposals have to be carried out by amending the FC procedures. We just want to give more time to members to discuss the items. You would like to change the time limit rule from 54321 to 55443. So can you emphasize that you will not be resorting to 54321 after scrapping, say, for example, 37A? Well, we need to discuss the matter with the non-establishment camp. You were able to agree on the proposals. Well, what we are proposing need not be all written into the procedures. Say, for example, for the first one, a member that has been sent out by the chair cannot come back again. We may not need to amend the FC procedures because the procedures are silent on that. But then in year 2006, there was a paper setting out the consensus of members. We regarded a 2-hour session as a meeting. Now, so perhaps we can decide on whether the meeting should last for 2 hours, 4 hours, or 8 hours. On the 19th of July, I could have said that the meeting would last for 8 hours, and then the member who has been sent out cannot come back. So certain things are written down in the rules, certain are not. So for things like this, we can adopt such an approach, as you understand that it is difficult to amend the procedures.
I will try my best to do it, but I don't know whether I will succeed. So, Stephen, you made a very good point. To show my sincerity, I said that we are willing to add in certain things and take out certain things. And we can do it by the way of writing out a paper. Cable TV. Chen Wei-Yan from Cable TV. You mentioned that for items discussed at the PWSC, they will be discussed again at the FC. 90%, yes. And it probably is because the administration officials have not been able to explain clearly at the earlier meeting. That's why they are raising the same questions again. Now, for the 8-hour FC meeting earlier, the pro-establishment camp members don't want to add meetings, and for some other members, they haven't even replied. So are you going to do more to coordinate among different members in relation to holding meetings and adding meetings? It's a difficult task to coordinate among members. Now, when we ask whether members are willing to have extra meetings, it's the pro-establishment members who are willing to agree to additional meetings. The pan-democratic members normally don't respond. But whenever we actually hold the meetings, they do come back. Now, the quorum is 8+1 only. But we shouldn't have 8 members only because we have 60 members or more. So I would only have a meeting only if there are more than half of members attending. For these proposals to be made, I will be convening special FC meetings to discuss those. We will host special FC meetings to discuss those. This will be a very difficult task. We may have to hold a number of special FC meetings before we can get it done. Now, relationship among members. Now, no matter what political views you have, ultimately you are here to serve the members of the public, and you have your own political interest overriding public interest, then that's going to be problematic. So we share a common goal, and that is we understand and we attach a lot of importance to livelihood issues. And so that would be easier for us to discuss things through. Sorry, the speaker's off mic. Okay. Now, the two sides should bear responsibility. But, as I said, a lot of time is spent not on asking questions. Around 30 to 40% of our time was spent on dealing with procedural matters, on adjournment motions, 37A motions, etc. So that was a waste of time. Is it the case that the government can't make improvement? Of course, there is room for improvement on the part of the government. But say if in the future we say that all the proposals to go directly to the FC, then we will have to extend the meeting time. Now, normally, in the past, we have, say, 8 hours on PWSC, 8 hours on FCs, and maybe in the future we can have, say, 12 hours for FC meetings. So then, if that is done, then members can have a more focused discussion, ask more focused questions. But members will find it more difficult because you have to ask quality questions and the meeting time is also longer. Now, for the new time government, I think they are adopting a new style of governance. Now, in the corridors of members' offices, now we are seeing government officials here and there, and they feel that they have a responsibility to hold meetings with members to explain things to them. And I told them that, well, approach the opposition camp members first. So I hope that in the future, government officials should approach the non-establishment camp members more, especially the radical ones. Well, FC is just only a part of the system to monitor the government. We have the full council meeting, we have the panel meetings, we have the PWSC, ESC, etc. to monitor the government. Now, if you are really keen about monitoring the government, just don't rely on the FC only. Ask the government officers to visit your office and talk to you. And if you think that the government is giving you fake figures, we try to prove it is fake and then try to refute them. But you're now accusing the government of providing fake figures, but you don't have anything to substantiate your saying. So that's no good. And I think the government should also make improvement. Now, different government offices come with different caliber. Some are better than others in answering members' questions. So the government must conduct a review on itself. Now, sometimes they go around in circles, and they would refuse to answer members' questions, even though the members have quoted a lot of very concrete information. They are evading the questions. Now, there is always cost overrun of projects, but the government has not been able to give an explanatory, satisfactory answer. So the members keep on asking. I will put up with that kind of scenario. So that's a problem. So both sides should bear responsibility. And for our part, I think we should try to remove obstacles which are standing in the way of the conduct of meetings, and we should have a more focused discussion. And at the same time, the government should make amends as well. So if that is done, and there will be a breath of fresh air in the LegCo in the future. So there will be quality questions, and the government will answer members' questions, and the government is willing to admit mistakes they have made, and so on. That would be a very good world, perfect world. Chairman, in the last FC meeting, towards the last hour or so, and there were several motions moved. Do you think you have conducted the meeting in a wrong way? You have not properly handle the pan-democrats' requests. Well, for the last meeting, towards the latter part, I think it's not desirable. I was very anxious back then. If you looked back at what happened, I have advised you many times. I have advised members many times. We didn't have much time. So I was worried that we couldn't work on the hospitals because we were talking about a sum of $5 billion. There are expansion plans for the several hospitals. They must be passed, or else people's lives will be affected adversely. And I would also be like to pass items which have not been taken out for separate voting. And Dr. Helena Wong has withdrawn her letter, and Dr. Fernando Zhang, at the same time, has written in. I was a bit late, so I would not ask government officials. So I have to go by the FC procedure. So at that time, there was certain chaos that day, I admit. And problems were bound to arise. But I have said already, I put this to the vote, which means you could not go on speaking. And also the way that he was asking for an adjournment was wrong. He just raised his hand and asked for adjournment. Now, what we normally do is that you ask the chairman for the time to speak, and then I give you the approval. Then you can start speaking about your motion. And Mr. Chiu Ka-chun was rushing out and asking for an adjournment motion. We've just got several minutes left, and you're trying to stand in the way. You are putting yourself against members of the public. Now, in the future, if we have an additional 30–40% of our time to deal with the matters, that kind of thing won't happen again, I believe. So that's why I am so keen and eager to get to float my proposals. And I couldn't hear what he said either, because the chamber was not a very good venue for FC meetings. The president of the council was assisted by certain hearing aid in listening to members' addresses or speeches. But for myself, sitting in the middle of this table, I couldn't hear what members said.
Yeah. She's raised her hand many times. Well, a question for Mr. Tian. Both Regina Yip and yourself supported the motion to adjourn in relation to the Disneyland project. Are you going to support Mr. Chen's proposals? If you disagree with the government in the future, what are you going to do? Well, by merely asking questions, you can't block the approval of an item. And then a question from Mr. Chen. You've said that you're going to take this paper to the pandems and have a discussion with them. You can see that it is highly likely that they are not going to support you. So do you think there is any room for fine-tuning for the 4 proposals on your part? Mr. Tian. As the Deputy Chair of the Finance Committee, I need to know clearly my role. I have to chair a meeting and make known my stance. On one occasion, the chairman was not able to come to chair the meeting, so I would have to chair the meeting. Otherwise, as a member, I have the right to air my views, and there is no need for me to support the government in each and every case. But of course, I have to justify my disagreement. I'm accountable to my constituents. As to the scenario you referred to, well, I took that route because the official involved was not able to answer my questions at all. Well, it was impossible for me not to do that. Otherwise, I'm not accountable to my voters. And then last time, many people asked me why I supported adjournment of the item but not adjournment of the meeting. Well, I was not happy with the item because information was inadequate. Therefore, I would like to adjourn that particular item. I would like to urge the administration to think hard and discuss the matter with the Disneyland again. I don't think it is a matter of just take it or leave it. It got on my nerve, and I don't think any matter was as urgent as that. So I would like to adjourn the item. If C.Y. Leung couldn't deal with it, I hope Carol Lam could. Now, as to the motion that no more proceedings should go ahead, it means that the remaining items on the agenda would also be blocked. If you have got views on a particular item, you shouldn't adjourn the meeting. You should just adjourn that item. Therefore, last time I was again adjourning the meeting, but I supported the adjournment of the item. It shows that I try to be rational when I approach anything. Let me cite an example so that you can understand what we talk about when we adjourn an item or the meeting. Like Michael has said, if information is lacking, then we want to adjourn an item. When we adjourn a meeting, there may be 10 items on the agenda still not yet dealt with. So when we adjourn a meeting, then everybody just go home and sleep. It's difficult to call a meeting. Why should we want to adjourn the meeting as a whole? The establishment camp would be strongly against this, so it has never materialized. It is meaningless to adjourn the meeting altogether. As to whether there's room for fine-tuning among the 4 items, well, we may need a 5th item. That is whether we should still keep the 2 subcommittees, because 80 and 90% respectively of the PWC and ESC items were discussed afresh. Now, if we can save time, say, for example, instead of 8 plus 8, 16 hours, we only give 12 hours to the FC, and then we can save 4 hours. Of course, it depends on the views of the pro-establishment camp. It may say that we should focus on 2 or 3 instead of all 4. So we need to look at the stance of the pro-establishment camp, and then we make reference to the views of the non-establishment camp. We don't know ultimately how many items can go through. Well, if you say that I'm wrong, back up your arguments with figures. Don't just reprimand me by gathering signatures. That's meaningless. Who else would like to speak? Economic Journal. 2 questions. You talked about 4 or 5 proposals. Have you talked to the government, and what was the view of the government? And then it was said that when the LegCo resumes in October, you will consult the establishment camp. In other words, are you trying to get re-election as the chairman of the FC? And what about Mr. Tian? Would you like to seek re-election as the deputy chair? The pandemics have already said that it is unreasonable for the seats to be monopolized by the establishment camp in relation to chairmanship. Well, you know that for the establishment camp, we have a weekly meeting. Every time we go through experiences like the FC meetings, we have a discussion. So it is an idea that has been mooted for quite some time. Well, a storm is upcoming, as you know. Now it is said that there will be a war on all fronts. Now you can see that we've been spending double the time. Instead of spending 2 hours on one item, we're spending 4 hours. So we need to do something about it. I haven't consulted the government. We just think about the proposals on our own. Maybe Mr. Tian should answer his question. Chair, you should answer your question first. Well, I've already said that I don't want to be the chair anymore. Why? Because it is better if we can make the changes. It will be easier for the chairman, whoever he or she is. Of course, you need to spend time to study and understand the rules and procedures, and we need to trouble the secretariat. You need to be familiar with the rules, otherwise you can't chair the meetings. It would be much better after the changes. But I think it is better to allow other members to have a go. We just can't rely on 1 or 2 members. But then if it is urgent, or if a storm or a war is coming up, then it may not be right for me to step down. So if there is a need for me to continue to chair the meeting, I won't shirk the responsibility. But when it is a sort of ordinary time, then I will step down. Well, on the 19th, I took a double dosage of my medicine to keep my blood pressure down before the meeting. Mr. Tian, I think we want to have a enriched experience in our lives, and then we can learn new things. I can go to different panels. I can see for myself who rises to drag the meeting, who rises to ask questions. I've been looking at members who have been exchanging looks, and I've been observing the chair in his ways of chairing the meeting. I've learned a lot. I really have to say from the bottom of my heart that the chair has been fair, and he has allowed many members to ask questions which to me are repetitive questions. So in fact, chair, whether it is peacetime or wartime, don't talk about stepping down. You are setting an example for many of us to see. On my part, I found it a very good learning experience. I'm interested in continue with the learning curve. As to whether I can continue with the deputy chairmanship, it all depends on the support of the colleagues. It is as simple as that. Who else would like to ask questions? Time is up. So last question from RHK. I'm Chen from RHK. After the disqualification, the pandemics will be the minority. Are you giving people the impression that you are adopting a high-handed approach? In the past year, I want to know whether public officers have been exerting a lot of pressure on you, and therefore you want to resort to this approach. Have you been urged by many government officials for you to speed up? Well, if you talk about high-handed approach, well, I cannot control what others say, but I do have a duty. I do have the duty to explain to the public that it is not a matter of high-handed approach to suppress them. It is a matter of fine-tuning the arrangements. Ultimately, it will be the public that will benefit. I understand fully what you are talking about. I don't think people would be giving me a round of applause because they will say that I'm taking away their rights, their freedom. I need to spend time and use more platforms to explain that that isn't the case. I think members can feel the pressure from the citizens. It isn't a matter of the number of members in each camp. I don't think you will. The members would deny what I've said.
Instead, I am exerting pressure on government officials, and after the meeting, I call them up and have a go at them. And they are doing things over the top, and I am always caught in the middle. So if they have answered the questions better, then I will not be caught in the middle. Nobody dares exert pressure on me. Well, let's allow this gentleman here to ask a question first. Again, Chairman, can you comment in brief on the data or the number of proposals passed? It seems that we've been performing much worse in past years. So what do you make of it? If you ask me, I'm disappointed. If we can turn the clock back, I should have stopped the speeches earlier on so that we can vote on the proposal on education. I really want to get the Tung Chung proposal passed because that has been discussed at PWSC at length, and they've got support from everyone, and only 6 of them abstained and 4 of them have been disqualified. So there's no objection. So why do we need to have further discussion on that? So if we get that passed, then we will have 25,000 PRH units and 10,000 private housing units, and people can get a flat sooner. And before the meeting, someone told me that they want this to be particularly passed as early as possible. And for the new term government, housing is very much a top priority. So that's something that I find regrettable, and that is the Tung Chung proposal didn't get passed. Thank you.